we're not enemy, we're friend.
Yeah, we'll be nice to you, promise.
Okay, we're going to start. Welcome to my presentation, teaching students with cognitive disabilities, high-frequency words. Okay. And I hope the sound is going to work, too. Sometimes it doesn't work. Okay. So this is, I made a Prezi to show you guys my intervention plan. This is our little roadmap, and I don't hear the sound. Oh, there it is. Okay. People who are at a higher rate of literacy, typically they earn a higher salary. They typically have better job outlooks. They're basically more self-sufficient than those who don't. And reading is not a natural ability. Unlike speech, the brain has a specialized area of the brain where it can focus and process that information, but reading doesn't have a specialized area. So students the problem with that is that we were concerned about the students that don't have, the emergent readers that already have disabilities, such as my students, cognitive disabilities, EL learners, and also kids that are homeless disadvantaged students. So we broke down our study into 3 different parts. I was concerned about my students who wouldn't be able to read due to their cognitive disabilities. They already have a lot of issues, and reading is just another thing that we put on them that's just a very difficult thing for them to do. For researcher 2, she focuses on the English language learners, and she said that most of the kids in her classroom, when they see a word and they don't know, they just shut down, and they don't even want to read it. They're so turned off by the whole experience. And she decided that she was going to help the students by putting them into small groups and just focus on different, the fluency part of reading. Researcher 3 works with students that are homeless, disadvantaged students, come from broken families, and they can't devote much time to just their academics because they're just basically in survival mode. So they're just trying to survive. And these students typically, they can't live in a home where they don't have a parent to provide for them and nurture them, where other students have that advantage. So this researcher, again, used small groups, strategies to help these students put them back on the track. Our purpose of the study was to see what strategies would be most successful and effective for helping emergent readers develop the foundation and comprehension for the skills. My area right here, my secondary questions was, to what extent will my students, moderate, severe, learn 20 high-frequency words over a course of 4 weeks? Researcher 2, which way will small group instruction affect EL success in word building? And 3, she concentrated on comprehension and what strategy is best for reading comprehension. So this presentation is just going to focus on what I did, and then at the end of the study, we'll come back and review all the findings. Sorry, I have to keep adjusting the sound. I never figured out how the sound works. So I worked with time delay procedure. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these procedures. Piracy Recency and direct instruction. Time delay is a method where fading the prompts is done during instructional activities, and reinforcement is given to increase the likelihood that the target skills and behaviors will be repeated in the future. I use this every day in my study. I also incorporated primary recency effect, and this explains, like it says, the degree of retention that individuals experience during a particular block of time. It just demonstrates, how to present when and how to present the information when you're teaching students. Direct instruction, as we all know what that is, instruction provides a systematic and manipulative instructional approach to teach information to students. Again, and then I just kind of brought in learning styles. We all know those are the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. I intertwined all this, as it says, the research-based practices and the learning styles to see if both these would make an impact on their learning. And I have been doing these things for a long time in the past, but I want to see what effect it actually has on my students. So, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so these are our learning styles. They have visual. Visual, obviously, it's the picture charts and cards, videos, anything that we would use. For my study, I used words and letters, flashcards, worksheets, those types of things to help the students. Auditory, a lot of the times, there are songs and chants. For my study, I used just the daily exposure to hearing the word the, you, of, is, those type of high-frequency words. And the kinesthetic, we used games, the bingo, hopscotch, cooking, we made word cookies, and pudding, art, any of those types of skills. Okay. And then there's just some samples. Particular ones that I actually did, this is a sample of what the worksheet looks like. So they're very easy, very clear. This is another sample of the word cookies. We just got cookie dough and made cookies out of the cookie dough, rolled them out. So these are just a sample of what I did, actual activities for the learning styles. The chains, as you see, up in the classroom. The words over there on the wall, those types of things. Okay, so time delay, I have a short little video. I'm not going to show the whole thing due to time restraint. But basically this video clip uses to teach the letters. And the longer the prompts are delayed, the more response is for the student's independence. So we're just going to watch this real quick. I'm going to just show you what I did with my students. Okay. And I hope the volume's loud enough.
Are you ready?
Yes.
X. X. That's X. Nice job. Y. Y. Good work. C. C. Nice job. You got it. Y. Y. Good job, that's Y. C. C. That's C, good work. X. X. Nice work, you got it. That one's X. Y. Y. That's Y. C. C. You got it, that's C. X. X. Good work. C. C. Nice job. X. X. You got it. Y. Y. Nice work, that's Y.
Okay. So I'm going to stop there. You guys have an idea of what it's like. So I started, when I began the course of study, I actually used time delay, as I said, every single day. During the pretest, that was my procedure I'd use. Of course, when I first ended, the initial words that we started working on each week, I gave, no delay. I just told them, so there was a 0 delay there. But as the week continued until we got to Friday, the students didn't already knew the words. They didn't need any prompt, and I thought they were learning quite fast, and I was actually impressed with their progress. So I collected all the data, and I just thought that this was a very easy thing to implement, because anybody could do this. I could just have one of my assistants do this. It's just easy to pick up. The best way to do that is with just flashcards, just short information at one time. And I'll go on to the next one. Okay. So direct instruction, we all know what this is. I use this throughout, again, intertwined with all the lessons I was doing. And basically with my students, we just did 5 words a week. And we started with flashcards, and the lessons were short and simple and very specific. It was usually a small group, and then I would pull the student aside and we did face-to-face independent trials with the flashcards. We also did worksheets, like I said, and fun activities to keep the kids engaged, interested. So I'm going to just show this quick little video because we do know what direct instruction is.
Today I'm going to share with you a few more words that kind of spice up The Wall by Eve Bunting. Bear. I know you guys have heard the word bear before. But listen to how this is used. I can see the bare trees. And notice the trees have no leaves. I'm wondering what bear in this case may mean. Bear. Do any of you have ideas? What's bear mean in this case? Otis, what are you thinking? Doesn't have any more leaves. It's bare. Can anybody think of another example of a time we would use bear? Brianna?
Bare feet.
Oh, your bare feet. And if you had bare feet, what would that mean? Jamal?
You wouldn't have no shoes or socks on.
Yeah, no shoes or socks. So there's nothing there. Just like the tree is bare, your feet would be bare. You know that word? You've heard it? The next one, weighted. Weighted. And if you notice, it's not spelled W-A-I-T-E-D, like I waited in line at McDonald's for a really long time. But instead it's weighted, like weigh, how heavy something is. And listen to how it's used in this story. Letters weighted with stones so they wouldn't blow away. So the letters were weighted with stones. What are your thoughts about that one, Brandon?
Like pressure, like putting pressure on something.
So putting pressure on something. What else? Luis?
For an example, like if it's a windy day and you gotta and if you have a open window, the sheets might be blowing everywhere, and you just might want to put a rock on top.
Did you ever really hear Luis's example? If it's a windy day and you've got the window opened, the wind's blowing in, you've got a stack of sheets of paper, you might want to put a rock or something on them, and that rock would be your weight. A lot of times people have paper weights on their desk. Weighted. Not a typical word. I'm sure we've all heard, but not something we use a whole lot. They're tier 2 vocabulary words, and there's 3 tiers for vocabulary. 1 being words that kids recognize and know very well that need very little attention at all. Tier 2 vocabulary words are typically words that really need explicit instruction. And tier 3 words are words that they run across very rarely in text. Maybe words that I just clarify a meaning and move right along. But today I chose 6 tier 2 vocabulary words that I...
Okay, I'm going to stop there. So when I taught the kids the high-frequency words, I'd start the flashcard and ask them, what word is this? They didn't know. I'd say, try to sound it out. So I was giving them individualized face-to-face instruction. It was just the cards. We didn't worry about anything else. Then I went working on the worksheets. Those are very specific as well. And it was just short units of information that I presented to the kids each time. We built on skills, so once they started to get familiar with the words, then we started using more words and started to use magnetic letters to match the letters together. This proved to be effective for the students too, because the rate of learning was quite fast for my students. Okay, next one. That was primary recency. If I don't know if you're familiar with this one, this was new to me, but I really found it highly effective. Again, this was intertwined with everything I did. I'm going to show you just a quick little, the first video is a little game, and the second one actually explains it, and then I'll explain how I implement it in my classroom. Then I'm going to turn down the sound because it gets loud at the end. So I don't know if you remember any of those words, but you guys remembered like maybe 3 or 4? Yeah.
I wasn't even paying that close attention to that, remembering the words.
It's I only got like 3 words or so, so
It went fast.
yeah, it was fast. This video really explains it really well, and then I'll again show you what I did in my class.
Knowledge video series. I'm Lenny Vermoss, and I'll be sharing Primacy Recency with you today. Primacy Recency, another name for Primacy Recency is serial positioning. And basically, what I like to say with this is that serial positioning or Primacy Recency remembers that you remember best what comes first in a sequence, and second best what comes last, and the middle is kind of lost. I do like to use the example. If I give you a list of, say, 15 words, and I read them to you, and I said to write down the words you remember, which ones of the words on the list would you remember? Well, typically you'll remember the first words, you'll remember the last words, and then there's some words in the middle that have special significance that you'll remember as well. And that's really more to relevance, but mostly you'll remember the first and the last word. So that's basically a way to kind of explain how primacy recency works. This is a graph of primacy recency, and it really shows very well in a learning period, and this is a 40-minute period, your best retention time is at the beginning of class and at the end of class, and then in the middle, retention is a little bit less. Now, if you think about a typical school period, as I'm talking about, if you think about a typical school period, basically, that stresses the importance when students come into your classroom that you have something ready for them to do. Because typically you have lots of other things like taking roll, someone comes up, they missed yesterday, you need to give them assignments. So you need to have something planned, a bell ringer when the students come in to do it at the beginning of class. The second most important time is at the end of class. And what happens a lot of times at the class is you've been going and you say, well, you know, we just have 5 minutes left, it's not worth doing anything. But the end of the class time is good to play maybe a vocabulary game. We have some examples in some of our other video series like Taboo or something like that. Or you can do some activities where you're going to have to give them some processing time. But stress the importance of that time at the end of class because, again, the beginning and the end of class are typically the times that you need to spend and make sure the students are properly engaged. Okay? So the amount of processing time, again, depends a little bit on the length of the period. I know some people have a 80 or 90-minute period. If you look at an 80 or 90-minute period, you have a lot of downtime in the middle. What you can do is through state changes or the way you design your class period is you can break that into smaller periods. So an 80-minute period, you can break into 20-minute periods, which would allow you to utilize that time a little bit better as you're going through. Okay? So one of the things that I like about the primacy recency is make sure that you utilize the time that you have. The other thing I would say about primacy recency is, and I have no evidence to back this up, but I think that it might apply to the school year. So at the beginning of the school year, students are ready to come back and they're ready to start their new learning. And typically in a lot of classes, math classes especially, we spend that time reviewing what they did last year. The same thing happens when you come back from Christmas break. So, take advantage of those times when kids come back from vacation and they're ready to go. Thinking about primacy recency and how you define and use your class. So that's how we define primacy recency. We encourage you to use this strategy with intention to improve your practices.
Okay, so as I said, when I use this in my studying, like I said, like he said, the first 15 minutes were planned where I would just, again, review the words using a time delay. It was very short, one-on-one, specific, and very teacher-directed. Then when I was taking one student aside, the other students would write in their journals, copy the words down just for practice. Then I would just rotate and get to every student. I had 4 students, I forgot to say that, 4 students in the study. The next lesson after we were done reviewing our words, then I had plan activities, for instance, like a worksheet, like I showed you the worksheets, or we would play bingo, or they would do a word search, or they would use magnetic letters to match the letters to their high frequency words, or we would do some type of matching game. So it was something that they could do on their own that would just kind of reinforce what they just learned. And then the last activity, third and final part, was something designed to be fun, engaging. So like an art activity, like that art activity, or the chains. Or what they really loved, of course, was the word cookies, where they'd roll out the dough and make a letter, and then their cookie would say the word again, of or is, or those types of high frequency words. They also did pudding. That was a big, highly engaging activity because they got to eat their creations. We played hopscotch, where they would jump on the words, and I'd have them read the words when they jumped on the words. We played rolling the ball activities. So those are all types of activities that was, designed to help them remember, help them retain the information. So the results were, my results are actually, the majority of the students participated, will show a significant improvement. My results, which are here, I had the students in the pre-test. Student 1 had 5 words, and student 2, 9, student 3, 21, and student 4 had 19. So they all kind of had just a basic understanding. So at the end of the 4 weeks, the improvement was quite significant, and each student basically increased their words by 18 words. So my student 3 was the highest. He was able to read all the words that I presented them. These are the words that we studied. These are presented in order according to how frequently they appear in classroom print. So any typical book that you have would have these words in there most frequently. Starting with this, you see a lot of these words and a lot of these. Probably at high school level it's a little different because you're working with higher level, but at the elementary level, there's a lot of these words in the books. So student researcher 2, so those are just my goals, but researcher 2, she worked with 10 English language learners to increase the fluency, and at the beginning of the study, they could read 10 to 12 words correctly per minute. The students, like I said, they would just kind of give up because it was too hard in the beginning. So as the intervention continued, the scores increased, and by the end, they could read an average of 16 to 20 correct words a minute. So still, the students did say it was still kind of hard for them, but they were less likely to give up and try to sound the words out. So researcher 3, she worked with the comprehension part of it, with the disadvantaged students, the homeless kids, And at the beginning, they said that they enjoyed reading, but they didn't understand what they were reading. So the intervention ended, and they did increase their comprehension by 16% based on the students' responses. The researcher stated that this increase was due to the strategic questioning, small group instruction, and direct instruction. So she would ask those, what do we know about this? Prior knowledge, inferencing, those types of questions, summarizing. Based on the facts, the majority of the students increased reading by 2 levels. And the researcher made progress on the Dolch words. By the end, the students could read no less than 93 words out of 100. And they all scored at level or above in the phonics test. So we decided that, let's see if this goes to, going to go backwards. So based on all these findings that we did together, we decided that we all use the same direct instruction in small groups. We found that to be most effective in our overall study. With me, I felt that the primary recency effect was very effective, and the time delay was effective in teaching sight words for my students. And that is the end of my presentation. So, you guys have any questions?
Can we clap?
Yes.
That was actually very good.
Oh, thank you.
Very good.
Did you have to videotape your students actually doing this, or?
I didn't videotape them because that would require some more.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I didn't videotape them, but they did enjoy it. They liked it. They looked forward to it every day. I said, okay, it's time to do our words, and they, oh, yay. So they did enjoy it, and they learned a lot. I was very impressed with their, the scores at the end. And they learned fast.
I find the lower level kids too, they really like routine. They
Yeah.
like that predictability.
Yeah, we did it first thing in the morning after breakfast, and we just got right to it. And it was the same thing every day. We started up with the flashcards, then we did some type of individual work, and then we got together, did something really fun. And sometimes I included the whole class, because of course they're all going to want to make the cookies, and they're all going to want to play the games. So
Sure,
I did include
yeah.
them and the whole class in, but I was only taking information, the data collection from my friend group. I love a group.
Now, is this just part of a project you're doing, or your actual thesis?
This is my actual thesis.
Thesis, okay.
Actual
So you have,
research project.
this is part of your whole write-up and your whole presentation
Right.
as your thesis project. Wow,
Right.
okay.
So are you part of a group, or is this just your?
No, the researcher 1 and researcher 2, they're my partners, but they are at different sites. One works in Los Alamitos, in Santa Ana at the elementary level, and then works in Tustin. She teaches the elementary level too. I'm the only high school one, but my students are at that level, so it kind of worked out with us.
And so part of the project was to take all your data and do some statistical analysis of it.
Yeah. And analyze what are our research strategies, the ones that we selected based on our research, were they effective? That was our question.
And so there's 3 researchers. You were 1, and the other 2. Were all of those strategies equally effective, or was yours a little bit better than others? How did that turn out?
Well, we found that basically the direct instruction and small group was the most effective strategies. For me, particularly the primary recency and the time delay procedures, those are more specific that I did in my kids, and I found those for my group was very effective. Like the video said, that primary recency, I do encourage you guys to try to do that in the classroom. Try to use that first 15 minutes, or don't do roll call or anything like that. I know we typically do that, but try not to. And then the downtime, though, is where they suggest